What is up, wrestling fans? Welcome to another Pay-Per-Viewpoint edition of the Smark Out Moment Smack Talk podcast. AEW World's End just ended, and we are going to run that down, talk about all the positives and negatives, tell you a recap of what happened, and so on and so forth. I'm your host, as always, Tony Mango, and as always, I'm joined by Callum Wiggins.
Hello there.
So, before we get started, before we get into anything deep, any specifics and all that, generally speaking, how you feeling right now, Callum?
Better after the final three matches, but yeah, overall this was a pretty flat way to end the year.
Very much in agreement. Rob is going to be paying attention to the media scrum. He is obviously doing the coverage for that, so he's going to let us know if anything happens during there. So we got Ted in the chat right now saying the one dream we had for Tony Khan to be the devil, and he took that away. Yeah, he was not the big reveal on that. We will say who that ended up being. Spoiler alert, it wasn't the biggest shocker in the world, and it wasn't the Shockmaster either. But before we get into all that stuff, though, we do want to remind everybody that we have got this live chat going on right now. Sorry, I'm still totally sick, so I'm going to be finding myself trying to catch my breath a few moments here and there. On the live chat, you got the option of the super chats to make sure that we get to see what you have going on. Also helps us out with a little spare change. Kind of the same thing as the little thanks button you can see on YouTube there if you're listening to this after the fact. Also, keep in mind, hit that like button on this video. Helps us out quite a bit, especially right now if you're listening live. That might help us get up there on the live stream kind of capabilities that they have over there on YouTube. Double check that you are subscribed. Ring that little notification bell. Hit that join button if you want to get access to the same stuff as the Patreon, patreon.com/smarkoutmoment. And, you know, the Darkcast tier and all that good stuff that you find over there. Also, Redbubble and TeePublic, where you can pick up the merchandise options. Don't forget about that. And also don't forget about filling out that fan feedback survey. We did not do the coverage of that on this past hot tag, so we got a couple more days for any other submissions that you guys want to put out there, and we'll talk about that pretty soon. I see some more people filling in the chat right now. We've got Marco, we got Guy123, we got Adam. What's going on, everybody? Definitely let us know what you're thinking. Really enjoyed the show, Marco. Is it underwhelming? Guy123. I am in agreement with Callum here. I felt like this was pretty flat in a lot of ways. I don't think flat translates to horrendous or anything like that for people that are going to immediately think that Callum and I are going to be like, oh, this was, you know, if we could go back and redo the end of the year awards, we would make this every match was the worst match of the year or anything like that. You're in agreement with that, right, Callum? It's just, it's kind of blah. It's not that it's necessarily horrible.
Oh yeah, there weren't that many. There were a couple of matches that I would consider bad or badly thought out on the show. But yeah, overall, most of the matches in the kind of middle portion were just there. And yeah, the final three matches redeemed the show to a degree for me. But yeah, I'd say that overall it was just a bit, just a bit underwhelming. It's not often that I come out of an AEW show feeling like, not really much happened in the grand scheme of things.
It's weird because things happened on this card, but then there are things that undid those things, or there are things that we had seen coming from a mile away, or undercut moments here and there and all. So it's going to seem like we're talking about some pretty important things, and some of them are, fundamentally important things. And then some other things are just sort of, that didn't mean anything by the end of the night, or, you know what I mean? So it's going to make a lot more sense if you didn't check out this pay-per-view as we go along and we explain it. But we also want to know what you have to say, so drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you are in the live chat, I see Josh is in the chat too, and Dane. What's going on, guys? Then, keep chatting it up and keep telling us what you're thinking and all. So let's start getting into this with the 0 hour. Now, going into the 0 hour, there were 2 adjustments to the card. As if there hadn't been, we talked about on the hot tags, they had made some adjustments, added some matches and stuff. They added one match, Chris Statlander against Willow Nightingale. And then they also announced that later on in the night, one of the matches was going to have to change. Dustin Rhodes was going to be swapped in for Keith Lee because he was not cleared to compete. We don't know exactly what has been going on, but he did tweet out something about that he's been working through an injury from, I believe it was sometime in 2022. And oh, that's what it was. Okay. So if he's been working with an injury for all that time and all, I guess it just caught up to him and whatever. So that sucks. Hopefully he gets better real soon. But those were the two adjustments. And yeah, the first half hour was just a bunch of talking. And when they lead into that, Renee Paquette's like, all right, we're going to start off with Battle Royal, whatever. So I'm like, all right, cool. Battle Royale's first up. And then Willow Nightingale comes out. And I'm like, wait, what? Okay, never mind. It's one of those kind of glitchy things that happens. Around this same time, there's also all these reports about Andrade. There's still, of course, lots of chatter about what's been going on today with Chris Jericho. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. A lot of topics that weren't necessarily like, oh man, just hype for the pay-per-view. But there was still a lot of potential to this. So, despite having some of those things in the way, still had the chance to be really great. And I think for the most part, the 0 hour, the 3 matches, thumbs up. It was Willow Nightingale gets the win over Chris Statlander. They hug after the match because they're not feuding with each other or anything. Battle Royal was fun. Killswitch won that. He last eliminated Trent, if I remember correctly. Yeah, Trent. I don't think I necessarily would have gone with Trent as the final person because it was, kind of obvious once it gets down to those two, as if it wouldn't have been obvious already by the list of the people that were involved. And Wheeler Yuta, outside of screwing up his little promo, which he had the line that Long Island isn't even the best island in Long Island because Staten Island, that's trash too, whatever. And it's like, I know where you're going here, but it didn't work. But that was a fun match. Hook retained by submission. And overall, I liked the 0 hour quite a bit. How'd you feel about those 3 matches?
Yeah, I thought overall they were pretty good. I mean, the Nightingale and Statlander match was fun. They wrestled it well. It was probably, I'd probably argue, the best women's match on the show out of 3.
It was.
Yeah, there's two of the strongest women that they have having a strong match. The finish was a little bit wonky because Willow couldn't get Chris in immediately up for the Dr. Bomb. So there was a bit of a weird thing where it's like they fell on top of each other and Willow got a near fall off of that and then hit it when she was a bit more composed and ready to hit it. But it's good to give her a victory. Chris is being kind of, I would say, pushed down a little bit, but she's just had a long run as TBS champion, so they're using her to help catapult people like Sky Blue and now Willow Nightingale with victory here. And they're also telling a story about she's being courted by Stokely Hathaway, but doesn't seem to be receptive to it, but we'll see how that progresses. The Battle Royal, I didn't really think much of the Battle Royal in general, but considering some Battle Royal thing from AEW in the past, this was definitely on the weaker side of things. It's just nothing really happening until the final 6 or so people when Lance Archer got back into the ring and started killing people, and then Killswitch got in the ring and started killing people, and eventually just, as it comes down to him and Trent, and you know what the result is going to be. But I assumed the Killswitch was going to win the Battle Royal before I even knew who everyone was going to be in the Battle Royal anyway, so that didn't surprise me. Yeah, and Hook and Willie, it was a fun little, just garbage style match. There wasn't really that much to it. There was definitely a better no DQ match later on in the night, but it was totally fine. I saw that this was apparently this was Hook's second match in AEW that went over 10 minutes.
Really?
Yeah.
And this is one of the only matches throughout the night that I didn't find myself going, my God, this is taking forever. Because almost every match I was like, God, is this at the 23-minute mark or something? And not many of them even came close to that, but it just felt like it for a good portion of them.
Yeah, I was like, it was a decent little match. All the matches on the 0 hour were totally fine. They served their purpose. It did give me the kind of indication though of what sort of crowd we might be dealing with on this show.
Now.
Which is giving me the argument. I know that you're, as we'll talk about, going into this show at the very least, your world champion is from this area, and 2 of the people that wrestled in the first match are both from the Long Island area. But you kind of get the sense of why did you pay to turn up here? You only here to see MJF and literally nothing else on this show.
We'll talk about the crowd reaction for one of those things in particular for sure, because we got to break down quite a bit. But one thing to talk about later, I don't want to spoil too much about it right now, but did they say anything during this battle royal about when that title match was going to happen?
It was announced on the when they announced it that it was for a TNT championship, and they specifically said underneath it in big lines, anytime, anywhere.
Okay, because I didn't catch that, and they have never done this before, but it ended up being a very big part of the night, so we'll come back to that a little bit later. The first match of the main card was the All-Star 8-man tag team match, because there's 2 8-man tags on here. Bryan Danielson, Claudio Castagnoli, Daniel Garcia, Mark Briscoe against Brody King, Jay Lethal, Jay White, and Roosh. They kept teasing the Daniel Garcia dance throughout the whole thing, and then eventually it comes back around to Garcia gets the pin on Lethal, if I remember correctly, and gets a chance to do his little dance and all, and I thought it went longer than, or at least felt like it went longer than it needed to, but I still enjoyed the match overall.
Yeah, I thought that this was a really good opener involving like some of your best workers as demonstrated by how the Continental Classic went. I think that it might have been a little bit long, but I think it was an opportunity to make sure that all 8 guys had an opportunity to shine and do stuff, because you didn't want to just leave it all out. But essentially the real crux of this match and the story they told in it was all built around Daniel Garcia. Like, just starting from the moment that Daniel Garcia is making his entrance to the ring and Bryan Danielson's music cuts him off, to come down to the point of like Garcia not starting the match because Danielson starts the match, but tagging himself in when Danielson's on a roll, and then being the guy that kind of takes the heat for the most part. Eventually, Mark Briscoe comes in, does some really cool stuff on the outside. Same with Claudio, with just uppercutting everybody. It's always fun to see like Brody King destroying people. Like anytime that him and Claudio were getting involved in each other, that was great. And yeah, eventually it just all comes full circle to Daniel Garcia getting the victory in the end and celebrating with the other guys on his team. Jay Lethal looks like he's making steps towards separating from the Jarrett crew. I think that him and Mark Briscoe as a tag team would make a lot of sense moving forward, but then again, does Mark Briscoe, he's already said in the past that maybe he doesn't want to team with someone outside of Jay, obviously, so maybe that's just like an alliance thing that'll happen. Maybe it's just about time that Jay Lethal goes babyface at this point. But
it could be the type of thing that like they have a few matches like that, but they're not really a tag team, just sort of like, I mean, in this one it's like an 8-man tag, so it's like, you know, they put them up against each other, but
I think it'd be a good opportunity for Jay Lethal could potentially go babyface, whether he's staying in staying in AEW or whether he might be phased out and moved into Ring of Honor more permanently, especially if they're able to find like a TV home sometime in 2024.
Yeah, it could be the case.
Yeah, but as I say, it was a good opener. It's a fun little match.
It's you reminded me by mentioning the whole Jeff Jarrett thing. Made me laugh earlier in the night. Jarrett trying to say patriarchy. Did you catch that?
Yeah, the patriarcha or whatever.
It's patriarch. It's like, all right. I don't know where these extra letters are coming in, but yeah, you got most of them. Yeah, so it's like one of those matches that just on its own being a match that truly doesn't necessarily mean anything at all. I do think that it felt like it went on a little too long, but that wouldn't bother me as much if it wasn't the case for some of the other matches too, or the fact that, you know, we had already seen an hour's worth of wrestling at that point, and it was like, this is the first match that truly counts. But this is also when it seemingly everybody with their Bleacher Report feed crapped out on them, where it went black and had like a green line throughout it. Now you watch this not through Bleacher Report, you watch through Fight, right?
Triller, I think you'll find.
Triller. Did you have that issue, or was that just the Bleacher Report feed?
Oh, I never had any issue with the feed dropping out.
Huh. So I guess it's just BR, which is what it is, you know. Then there was the Miro and Andrade match. Now, going into this, as I said, a lot of stuff going on about Andrade, because apparently, supposedly, take it with a grain of salt, but it seems like it's probably true. Andrade is essentially done with AEW, that he quit in some fashion and is imminently going to be done with the company, despite how his contract would be carrying him throughout the spring. And according to at least one report that I had read, I think it was PW Insider, that he might have gotten into like a big argument backstage, not necessarily saying with who, I'm assuming Tony Khan, but he didn't work in like a, bitch fit type of a way or something. He just had a regular match. It wasn't like he was no selling stuff and, sandbagging Miro or anything. I didn't love the match though, by any means. I thought that this was pretty blah. And I only wrote down a few things on there. I wrote down like Miro flung himself backward pretty awkwardly when he went through the commentary table. He was like a light push and he flung himself. CJ Perry had on this like Catwoman kind of outfit and her finger covered because she had that surgery recently for that infected splinter situation. And, she got involved in the finish and in a way that doesn't make any sense, but it's pro wrestling. The whole, like, I support this person 100% throughout the match, but then I decided to just change my mind and help out my husband that I'm currently feuding with for some reason. She helps Miro win and Miro doesn't seem happy about it. So I guess the story is going to continue even if it's without Andrade and it's going to be moving on to some other person that TJ is going to be there, but piggybacking off of that and doing the same story going forward, like he's still just not going to want to have her as his manager, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally nobody cared about this match because they all seem to be pretty aware about the fact that Andrade was on his way out. I'd say this is New York. You usually get a smarter crowd than some other wrestling audiences. They seem pretty tuned into what the reports were saying. I think the initial report came out from Wrestle Purists saying that Andrade is going to be back in WWE almost potentially as soon as day one.
Yeah, if that's like a almost Rick Rude type situation, that could be pretty fun.
Yeah, well, it'd be a funny thing because he wrestled first CMLL yesterday prior to this one, and then he just wrestled on an AEW show, and now he might be wrestling a match. Well, he might not be wrestling a match, but he might just be on a show on Monday. So that's good for him. I mean, as I say, it always felt a bit of a convenience thing for Andrade more than an actual desire to be part of AEW.
Yeah,
it just felt like he was let go from WWE, or he didn't want to hang around WWE anymore, and AEW was there and available for him. He never really accomplished too much. For arguably the best stuff that he's done in AEW with the last 2 months with the Continental Classic stuff, and then he's now seemingly on the way out, and I don't think he'll be missed that greatly. This match, and this kind of plagued this match. I mean, I saw the comparisons to Twitter basically saying this was AEW's equivalent of Brock Lesnar versus Goldberg from WrestleMania 20, which is, well, not two guys that are on the outs, but one guy that's on the outs and one guy who is out on the outs in terms of his goodwill among the AEW audience in terms of Miro. The lack of crowd reaction to this was pretty. It's one of those instances where silence is deafening, and Miro his stuff doesn't look great if the crowd isn't reacting to it. Obviously, most wrestlers are like that as well, but Miro in particular, his stuff can be quite like plodding and tedious if the crowd isn't going along with him being like, whether it's meat chants or whether it's just like marveling at his power or anything along those lines. Is if they're not reacting to him, then his stuff is really boring to look at. Yeah, and then CJ stuff just continues to make little sense. Like, if she's going to turn on Andrade, why does she wait super late into the match to do it?
Mm-hmm.
So Miro can potentially lose some matches. She seems to be happy with Miro. Miro seems to be either confused or unsure about what's happened. I don't know if he's like anti it or, I mean, fundamentally they didn't like hug afterwards, or like she didn't get in the ring and raise his hand or anything. So there's still seemingly a separation there. One way or another, she's just Like at the end of the day, why would someone want to align with her now if seemingly her aim is I align myself to you, but my aim is to you to lose the match to Miro so I can eventually get back to managing Miro.
Right. And if she needs to like win him over by like letting him win matches or something like that, then why not try to go for going into the ring and give him a hug and be like, I helped you out or something. So it seems like it's one of those things that they're going for a story, but they don't want to necessarily execute it in a way that would be logical. So they're just going with, hey, we want the story to continue. Turn your brain off. You know what I mean? Not my favorite way of doing that at all. And I wasn't into the feud to begin with. So if it's not like hey, they took a weird detour, but everything leading up to it was great. I wasn't really digging it before, and I'm still not digging it. Then I think I'm going to be even more opposed to it going forward. But there's always next week. Who knows? Who do you think they might end up transitioning this over if they continue this whole thing and it's like CJ gets a new person she manages? So anybody that stands out to you that could be like a viable dimwit that would go with her?
I think the only way this would make any kind of logical sense why someone would want to partner with her is someone who is so far down on the pecking order that their best bet of getting any TV time is aligning themselves with CJ, even if the potential consequences are like staring you in the face. So maybe someone like trying to think who kind of fits into that role.
Because there's also got to be somebody that can realistically go up against Miro.
Well, yeah, but
it's not going to be like Aaron Solo, where everybody would just go, okay, so 3 moves in the match, he's done. Like,
well, yeah, but fundamentally, we all go into every Miro match knowing that Miro's going to win because Miro doesn't do jobs. So
yeah, it's another problem for her for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, it could be a guy like. Well, I'd say it could just be a cavalcade of absolute losers. Now there could be your Aaron Solos, your Nick Camarados, your I'm going to taste the Pensacola. That probably is going a bit too far, but like maybe some guy like Lee Johnson, or just like some guys that are hanging around either in Ring of Honor or like the lower reaches of AEW, and they just, she just tries to pluck them from obscurity, give them some exposure, and then Miro just destroys them. It'll probably just, I imagine it would just proceed into the case of she gets a new client, Miro beats him within a week now, rather than any kind of actual build up towards it. The only alternative would be is that that someone who hasn't signed with the company yet, or at least hasn't debuted yet, comes in.
True.
We've heard about like potentially Ziggler coming in for that.
And then if they do that again, and it's just, hey, we had a thing before, that'd be like going back to that story. Oh, thank you, Ted, for the super chat. Bring back Ziggler and finish his story with Lana. There you go. Perfect timing for it. Yeah, I mean, it's a possibility. And they could even play into that being like, hey, she's not only my manager, but we have a history together. And that could be why. And if they want to try to milk this for whatever they can, that could maybe be like the new twist on it is, all right, there's like a physical history between them on top of just client kind of relationship. I still don't want to see that either. I would want Ziggler to come in and just be like, all right, I'm having matches with these people. Just have the matches and all. But I do think we're going to get him in there pretty soon. So that match was kind of blah. Fortunately, the match that happened right after that, I felt the same about. It was Timeless Toni Storm retaining the AEW Women's World Championship over Riho. I wrote down 4 entire things in this match. I wrote down nothing going on other than the suspension of disbelief that Riho could actually be like fighting this much. Luther getting tossed out, Storm hitting her finisher, which looked kind of nasty, and I'm surprised Riho didn't get injured. And then Mariah May tossing the rose petals. That's all I wrote down for the match. I didn't care for it, really. Again, not the worst match I've ever seen in my life or anything like that for anybody who thinks we have to go, it's 0 or a 100 on a scale all the time. I just thought that it was kind of bland and boring and not interesting, and I knew that Riho wasn't going to win, and they never gave me a chance to think she was going to.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it was fine. It would be totally acceptable on an episode of Dynamite or Collision. Just didn't have anything else going for it to add an extra layer of excitement for pay-per-view. Crowd was really into Toni Storm, which is one thing. So it kind of defeated the object of Riho being the plucky babyface fighting from underneath. If basically any time that she was on offense, the crowd was trying to chant for Toni Storm or booing Riho. So yeah, as much as we dislike it, and a lot of other people I see online, like commentators, talk about how much they don't like Toni Storm. Clearly, we're in the very big minority on this one. Like, she's super over, whether it's just because people like the comedy shtick and they're just laughing along with it rather than actually seeing her as a credible champion is one thing. But at the end of the day, if that's what gets her over, then that's what gets her over. And
it's still in some ways better than the alternative of just being like, keep the character the same as part of the Outcasts, you know?
Yeah. I'd say I like the fact that at least in this match it wasn't as full of bullshit as the Shida match was at Full Gear. Like, they actually, she actually had a match with Riho. There were some little bits and pieces with Luther on the outside until he eventually got chucked out. But she won, and she won fairly cleanly in the end. So yeah, I can't complain that this is a more palatable version in ring of the timeless Toni character. But yeah, we'll see how it progresses with Mariah May having her first match coming up soon. I imagine it will be against Riho, but we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, it was a match. It was there.
After that was an interview. Dante Martin being interviewed by Lexi Nair. And
actually, we missed something from the 0 hour that might be worth talking about, pertinent to the women's division, which was there was a video package announcing that Serena Deeb is coming back.
Oh, that's right. They did do that during there. I forgot to mention that. So she was saying that she's been out studying the competition or something along those lines.
Yeah, it was very good. It was like she was in a straitjacket, and essentially, like, it wasn't like a Houdini sort of character that she's developed, but she's pushing the idea of obviously her being the professor and her being able to get out of any single hold or situation she finds herself in. But it's good to just have some solid people back into the women's division.
Certainly not going to hurt having her around. That's for sure. But yeah, Lexi Nair talking to Dante Martin about how he had his injury, which set him back on his quest to become a champion. And Orange Cassidy interrupts and says, okay, well then try to take the international title from me on Wednesday. So that match is happening on there. And I fully expect Orange Cassidy to retain, but it should be a fun match.
Yeah. As I said, Dante Martin's been doing some good stuff as part of the Trios team with Darius and Action Andretti. And so it's, I'm sure he'll have a really good match with Orange Cassidy, even though he won't win.
How long ago did the whole thing with Action Andretti drinking the water start?
It was on Dynamite.
Just this week.
Yeah.
Okay, because I was like, I don't know if they've done that on like Rampage or something weeks prior, but this week when that happened, I was just like, God damn, that dude just... And then when they did it again tonight, I was like, okay, this is a gimmick now.
Yeah, it sounds like the sort of thing that somebody saw him do backstage.
Yep.
Or that he just said, oh, look what I can do, and just do that. And then decided, hey, that's your character now.
Yeah, which just like... when we get to the end of the year awards next year, who knows? We might end up having Action Andretti drinks water fast as like one of the things to mention. If it goes that long, who knows? As I mentioned before, Keith Lee not able to wrestle on tonight's card. Dustin Rhodes swapped in for him. And I didn't like how they booked this match.
Yeah.
Swerve immediately goes after Rhodes. And with a little bit of help from Prince Nana, because the bell didn't ring, they set up the cinder block. He stomps on it. Rhodes is being checked on by the trainers and all. He's gotten beaten up. He's clearly injured, storyline wise, and they're taking him to the back, and it's just like, no, I'm going to fight or whatever. And you would think, okay, well, Swerve's the guy that we're pushing here. He's the guy that needs to look well. Dustin Rhodes is not somebody that they're prioritizing. He is the replacement person as well, and he's not even the replacement person in the sense that, like, all right, we couldn't get Keith Lee, but look at this. So we got, The Rock is here or something where it would be like, oh, holy shit. It's just a lower end guy on the roster. And they have a full match. Dustin's just able to wrestle a normal match, and they could have done that match normally without the injury angle beforehand, and it still would have come off a little bit like, I don't know, I kind of think that Swerve should be putting up more of a fight than this. The injury angle leading into it, there's no justification in my mind for Dustin to put up that much of a fight.
Yeah, I thought in terms of just booking wise, this is my least favorite thing on the entire show. Just because, yeah, as you say, he attacks Justin right at the start. I thought, okay, do that big injury angle. This match was never supposed to happen in the first place. You make Swerve look like an absolute killer and a bit of a dick because he just takes out the guy before the match can even happen. Just ruins his leg, sends a message to Keith Lee, just walks out saying this wasn't the match that I was planned for, so I'm just going to take him out and send a message to the guy that I'm waiting to still have this match with. And yeah, you could have just called it a day there. If you then do the story of Dustin getting back into the ring and having the match, then you just have Swerve beat the shit out of him for another couple of minutes and pin him.
Yep.
That's totally how you can do it, and you still have Dustin Rhodes show, okay, he's still gutsy because he's gone into the ring to fight, but you just have Swerve kick the shit out of him and win. Because, it's, as you say, he's the guy you're pushing, he's the priority. Dustin Rhodes is bulletproof. His career's not done, but he's never going to be pushed to the limelight again. So I don't see what the benefit of having him do this gutsy, like, oh my god, what a courageous effort from Dustin Rhodes angle would end up being. Like, because he's not going to be on Dynamite next week. He's not going to be challenging for the TNT title or any other championship down the road. And if he, at the end of the day, he's Dustin Rhodes. If he says, oh, I want to challenge this guy for the title, then you just do it because he's Dustin Rhodes. So you don't need to build him up that much. And just to have Swerve take any sort of offense from this guy, especially after you've stomped on his leg with a cinder block. Yeah, it felt like a really, really unsure way of doing it. And the worst part about it, beyond that, is that you should know full well, especially after everything that happened in the Continental Classic, the Swerve does all this evil stuff to Dustin Rhodes, and he's getting cheered for it. And so when the babyface that's been in peril the entire thing does make his big epic comeback, the crowd are booing him because they want Swerve to win.
Right.
So yeah, just from a pure booking approach to this was just really tone deaf, I'd say. One
of the multiple things that happened on this event that just made me go, I don't think sometimes, I mean, clearly sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but we know that WWE under Vince McMahon, it was whatever the hell Vince wanted, and he doesn't listen to the fans really. Tony Khan for a while seemed like he would be listening to the fans, and this kind of came off as one of those nights where it's like, I don't give a shit what you might think. This is what I want to do. And I'm going to ignore all the signs that point in this direction. I'm going to ignore how it's logically going to go because I wanted to book this match, and you should just cheer with it. And if you're not, then la 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 la, I'm not going to hear you. Same as what probably happened when the crowd started interacting in the next match, because that was the 8-man tag team match with Big Bill, Ricky Starks, Powerhouse Hobbs, and Konosuke Takeshita, rather than Kyle Fletcher, against Sammy Guevara, Darby Allin, Sting, and Chris Jericho. So we got to talk about the Jericho stuff. Prior to this event, it comes out there that Jericho has been accused of, from the reports that I'm reading and all that stuff, this is the breakdown that I've seen. So maybe there's some other information that I haven't quite seen yet. Seems like what had happened, according to, was it Hausman was the one that broke it, right?
Yeah, if you can call it that.
And then other people have corroborated things and all. But apparently this might have come out in 2019 or something.
Well, yeah, to be honest, we kind of have to go even a bit further back to Christmas Day, which was when Jericho had a kind of a spat on Twitter with Nick Hausman.
Over the NDA stuff.
Yeah, where Houseman basically just said, I think Jericho put out basically a comment saying that he's not under any NDA regarding the brawl out situation.
Mm-hmm.
And then Houseman said, what about all the other NDAs you've had other people sign?
Right.
And then
Jericho blocked him.
Blocked him on Twitter. And then, now Houseman went on to a podcast, or his podcast. I don't know. I assume it's his.
It's his Rumor and Innuendo.
Yeah. So he was on that and then basically compared Jericho to Harvey Weinstein.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's all kind of come out in the wash since then about everyone has tied this back to Kylie Rae. So when Kylie Rae was, if people are unaware, because as I say, you might not have been watching AEW at the time, but
and it's
Kylie
4
Rae
years
was one of the
ago.
Yeah. Well, Kylie Rae was one of the initial women signed to AEW, appeared on the very first AEW show, big pay-per-view, Double or Nothing. And was presumed to be someone that they would be pushing quite heavily from the start. And then pretty much as soon as she had that match with AEW, she was out of the company. And there's a lot of speculation around it, not connecting it with what we're about to talk about, but just about, because there's been other instances with her in companies as well.
Mm-hmm. She was like in and out of TNA for like a very quick amount of time and popped up for some indies, and then had stated that she had like alcohol abuse problems, I believe. And
yes, there's been a lot of incidents surrounding that. Like she's been talking about like how she's like dealt with depression and had an alcohol problem as well. So people naturally would just assume that was a similar incident that occurred with the AEW thing. But now stuff has come out about how Jericho might have, again, I've got to say all this, throw the alleged word out there constantly at this point in time, just attach that to everything that we say at this point. But so allegedly Jericho approached her inappropriately.
That he like got somebody to get her to go to his locker.
Yeah, and assuming it was going to be some kind of like just a group thing with like other people involved, like other personnel, and then it was only him in there. He made a move on her. She obviously rejected it. He got her to sign an NDA or at least like pushed an NDA on her to make sure that she couldn't say anything about this incident. And that's the long and short of it. And now that sort of stuff is coming out because somebody kind of, I don't know whether it was Houseman this time or somebody, at least on Twitter, kind of said that whole story. And then some other tweets came out with Kylie Rae liking them, relating to that kind of negativity, or relating to the idea of positing that
comparing him to Weinstein.
Yeah, and then Kylie Rae liking them kind of then adds fuel to the fire that their assumptions might be correct. And again, we have to throw all the alleged out there. There's innocent until proven guilty and all of that malarkey. I always tend to go with the sense of, especially in these situations, I always tend to immediately side with the accuser. And technically, Kylie Rae hasn't actually accused Jericho of anything.
Yeah, unless she comes out and says, yeah, this is my story, this is what happened, blah, 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 blah. It's still like that extra level of a barrier between that.
But there's also the argument to suggest that if she is under an NDA, she can't do that.
True. And she might not necessarily want to either. You know, It could be one of those things that she feels embarrassed about, or that she feels like that could threaten her financial security, or, there's all sorts of different reasons that people don't say anything for that. But there's also the idea that sometimes those things don't come out and people don't say anything about it because they might not necessarily be true. So like you're saying with the allegeds and stuff, you never know for sure. But at the same time, sometimes when there's smoke, there's fire, and you gotta not just ignore stuff outright, especially if it's like, oh, well, I'm a fan of Chris Jericho in the ring, so that can't be true. Well, you can't approach things that way. I loved Kevin Spacey as an actor, and we saw what happened with all that,
Yeah, so I'd say I think fundamentally, and we'll get on to the actual match and what happened in it, but just as a fundamental thing, especially due to the reaction that he got during this match, they should do an injury angle on the next episode of Dynamite, get Jericho off TV for an extended period of time, conduct an independent investigation.
For like the fifth time in the past 2 years.
Yeah, well, I know. Well, at least this one won't involve Punk directly at all.
Yeah.
It's probably the first one that doesn't involve Punk for a long time. But yeah, just conduct a internal investigation, find out what you need to find out, and if nothing, there's no serious grounds about it, or there's nothing that could be delivery proven, then you bring him back once the heat's kind of died down a little bit, or you can just move on with it. And if he's found to have behaved in that sort of conduct, then you fire him.
You would hope that they would.
Yeah, you have to at that point. Like, if that stuff comes out and it is very clear and obvious, or at least the investigation proved beyond pretty much shadow of doubt that has happened, then you have to move on from him. Like, that's just the way it is. Like, won't take away anything that Jericho has done to help get AEW off the ground, but you can't have a guy with that record doing it, and especially with how wrestling's been trying to, or at least on the surface, trying to clear out people with those kind of accusations in the past few years. But we'll wait and see how it all proceeds. So at least we all know this is just the first day of it. This is going to rumble on for quite a long time, I imagine. It
is now putting some other things into perspective when, like, Ric Flair recently under fire, and Jericho is one of those people that was quick to be like, you keep doing you, Nature Boy. And then you see, like, Jericho's response to the whole hush money thing with Vince McMahon, where he was like, it's no big deal. This shit happens. Whatever. It's his company. And it's like, that stuff now, even if there's nothing to this, that looks a lot worse. And at first, I thought that this crowd was just fine with it. And I had written down, wow, it seems like the crowd's not even fazed by any of that because they're just singing the Judas song anyway and all. But then Caroline pointed out to me that there was a sign in the crowd, World's NDA, which I thought was really great. And then later on, a Kylie Ray chant started to break out. I was like, all right, cool. This crowd's actually, like, going to acknowledge something behind that. And it seemed...
Kylie Ray?
At one point they were chanting Kylie Ray.
Oh yeah, but I didn't know if it was just confusing it between Kylie Ray and NDA, which they were definitely chanting at one point as well.
Yeah, NDA was definitely a chant too. I thought I heard Kylie Ray. Maybe I am wrong about that, but I thought I heard Kylie Ray with it there.
I mean, he was definitely booed every time that he was going to the ring, and they got progressively louder and louder as the match went on.
Yeah, the first time he got tagged in, it was kind of more like that muttering, like, rubble. Nobody really, like, saying anything. No crowd chants that were picking up by all the other people. Once we get, like, we want Sting, that kind of a thing. But, eventually, like, after the we want Sting thing, the NDA chants come out and all. And that took away from the match, for sure. But I saw that apparently Ricky Starks gave him a middle finger, and people are like, oh, is this like a shoot middle finger and all? So that was pretty funny. But they tag in, they tag out, blah, blah, blah. Everybody, does their bit. Big Bill's got some ugly ass boots on. Hated those, like orange, really popping on the screen type of boots. Sting was struggling quite a bit in this match. And, it seems like that Revolution match, it's probably time for him to be retiring based off of the way that he was moving here and all. But he still was able to get some stuff in there, and eventually Guevara gets the win over Starks with a shooting star press, and Vladimir's in the crowd, which I was like, oh, fuck yeah, Vladimir, that's awesome, dude. But, another match that, like, it went on quite a while. The Jericho stuff obviously took away from it. The Sting stuff, yeah, if I'm being objective and I'm not doing the whole, like, yeah, he's a legend, so who cares? Nah, this Sting stuff wasn't good in this match. And honestly, there were some other people that kind of just did their thing, and I wasn't loving it. I didn't actually love when Takeshita and Darby Allin were in the ring together. They were kind of flipping around in a way that it felt a little bit sloppy to me. So I wasn't the biggest fan of the match overall, but it wasn't my least favorite of the night.
I'm going to say that the only thing that I really loved about this match was every time that Konosuke, Takeshita, and Darby Allin got involved with each other. Because like Takeshita was throwing him about all over the place, and it was fantastic. Like, yeah, that's the thing with Darby Allin. Like, everything that he does looks a little bit sloppy because he just recklessly throws his body around the place. But that's just perfect for a guy like Takeshita who just throws people around a lot. Yeah, so like from some of the German suplexes where he's landing on his head pretty much, and the avalanche spinning blue thunder bomb from the top rope, that was like crazy as well. Yeah, I basically just came out of this thinking, yeah, I want these two to have a match on Dynamite or Collision like next week. No, that'd be great for me. Yeah, Guevara getting the pin on Starks, which probably suggests that him and Jericho are going after the tag titles. So yeah, well, fundamentally, based on what we just said, that match should happen on Dynamite this week. Jericho and Guevara lose, and Jericho has an injury angle. He's taken out by the Don Callis family or something, and then yeah, he's out off of TV for a while. Sammy Guevara is left to fend for himself for a bit. And it might actually be for the best, because now the Don Callis family can just focus on getting their guys over in other matches, because now there's no Kenny Omega to focus on, and potentially pretty soon there won't be any Chris Jericho to focus on either. So now they can just concentrate on having their guys fighting with other people and moving up the rankings that way.
Double checking to see what we got in the chat right now. We got forgot to give a shout out to Grim earlier. At least for joining us. XOY is in the chat too. Made it. Thanks for the videos. Thanks for joining us. Guess Five's in the chat too. If Khan knew about this Jericho stuff and then he went on Twitter, his Twitter rant and hired Flair, makes him look real silly. In more ways than one. That's for sure. I'm so curious if anybody is going to say anything about that on the media scrum, but I would bet $1,000 that nobody's going to have the balls to say something about that. They're going to softball questions to Tony Khan instead. We're going to get the whole, yeah, there's been criticism about the women's division. Can you tell us what you think? And then, it's like, here's the softball. Then Tony Khan goes, well, I think that, and then he inserts the names of the 4 women that competed. I think that they proved that they had great matches tonight. This one had a great match. That one had a great match. That one had a great match. They're the best women in professional wrestling right now. Nobody's going to say, what's up with that Jericho stuff, huh? And I would love for these people to grab, the stones and actually go ahead and do that. But yeah, I'd be shocked if anybody bothered to ask questions about that. Or even the stuff that's not even as controversial, but to be like, yo, what's up with, like, you gotta pick up Goldberg or something? Like, it just seems like people are probably going to ask, how great are the numbers for this amazing show, Tony, or something? Which I can't say amazing for the next match. Julia Hart against Abadon for the AEW TBS Championship. I didn't like this at all. This is my least favorite match of the night. I remember just like rolling my eyes when the fans were chanting, "This is spooky," and I'm like, this is something, all right, but it's not spooky. The stipulation was biting is legal, all for Abadon to bite Julia at one point. At least she, potentially might have done better then than she did with some of the other moves, because that driving knee strike that they supposedly had, totally whiffed that. Moonsault at the end, awful from Julia Hart. She just landed on her feet and then laid down. I didn't like this at all.
Yeah, this was very botchy. So I think the crowd wanted to get into it because Julia Hart has definitely been getting super over with her character, and Abadon has done pretty well in the last couple of weeks as getting some more exposure on TV. But it's one of those instances where the lights were shining brightest on you. You came out of it like a bit of a deer in the headlights thing. They just couldn't get on the same page and work things out well enough between the two of them. They were botching a lot of spots. The moonsault at the end was like the worst one she's ever hit, at least that I can recall anyway. And yeah, having interference as well with Sky Blue getting involved, and like that also sullies the matches itself in a way. And yeah, that's like, there's really not much to say other than that it's just a bad night in the office for both women, really, and better to just move on and forget about it. But yeah, just as a bell to bell thing, this is almost certainly the worst match on the show. But I kind of felt the the way that the Swerve Dustin Rhodes match was booked, and the total apathy surrounding the Miro and Andrade match was more offensive to me than this match was.
As in, like, match quality, this was the worst, but segment, the other ones beat them out.
Yeah. Also, this was significantly shorter than at least the Miro and Andrade one.
Yeah, I think this was like 8 minutes or so. Felt like it went on longer.
It was actually 11 minutes, 11 and a half minutes, this one.
Yeah. Still felt like it went longer than that. Guy 123 in the chat's asking, can we do a TNA mock draft eventually? At some point. And you could always make sure that you we did something mock draft related with TNA. I think we did like an ultimate card or so.
Yeah. I don't know whether that was me and Rob doing that one. No, we did it. We just did a New Japan one. We did do one. It's a dark cast. You can find it somewhere in the dark cast ones.
Let's see. I'm trying to see where because the mock draft ones at this point, we've got enough of them that it's not just as quick as clicking on mock draft and having them all listed on there. Survivor Series type stuff, AEW and WWE mock draft thing. So this might be going back like a couple of years at this point.
It was definitely at least a year ago, and probably even longer than that. Probably sometime in 2022 or like 2021.
At this point, I'm in 2021 and I'm not seeing it. So it might have been that we incorporated TNA into a mock draft that's labeled something else.
No, it was definitely a pure TNA one. I do remember doing that one.
Well, at the very least, if you want us to do another one
that's added onto there because we didn't do it because it was just a dark cast one. Maybe it was before we were kind of like tracking things as closely as that one.
Yeah, it might have been that.
Search around. I probably put it together at that point. So.
Search around, and if you find it, if anybody finds it, let Guy123 know. But yeah, if you want to make sure that we do, pick a poison tier. It's always an option. I have not been, a big fan of TNA and following all that, so I don't know how awful my card would be, but we would try. And maybe that would even be fun to just see how awful of a card I would get in the making. I guess 5 says, feel bad for Julia. She's got a lot going for her. Bad night at the office, in agreement with what you were just saying, Callum. Thankfully, we did have 3 other matches on the card that ended up being much better than some of those. No DQ match for the AEW TNT title. Christian Cage against Adam Copeland. All things considered, up until pretty much the very end of this, I was digging this quite a bit. It was a lot of fun. I liked, in particular, the spot that Cage had the Boston Crab on Edge, and he was like sitting on a chair which was resting on Copeland's neck. I thought that was pretty innovative and pretty cool. Things went a little haywire towards that end, though.
Yeah. We'll obviously get to the end, but I think for the most part, this was a fun little brawl around the ring before, and then through the arena before getting involved. Like Copeland diving off part of the stand onto Christian while just battling through the crowd. I mean, I've been super impressed with how Copeland's entered AEW. Like he's clearly not here for just a paycheck. He's here to put his body on the line, and he's adapted to the quote unquote AEW style very well. And as I say, he's doing a really, really good job. And this match was great. They put their bodies on the line in multiple ways, but they did it in like smart, interesting things, like stomping Copeland's head on the steel steps, like they were doing beforehand, and the sunset flip off a ladder. As I say, it got a little bit wonky towards the end, but it was the flaming table spot that was the wonkiest part, I think, in terms of just a spot with it. Maybe it was just one of the things, because it seemed like there was a kind of a miasma affecting a lot of the matches on the show, but it was just one of those things that where other things are going wrong in matches, then something has to go wrong in this match. And that was, okay, we've set up this flaming table for Nick Wayne to have this big spot with Copeland powerbombing through, but Copeland just overshoots it, and so Wayne just slides off the table pretty much.
Even before that, the fire went out.
Well, yeah, but that's
So
to be. I kind of expected that to happen because these things like flaming tables don't stay flaming for long because the table itself is not flaming. It's the
the
liquid on top of it, like
propellant
paraffin
on top, yeah, and that's something that like if they would have been able to fix that immediately and do the right move, then nobody would bother to talk about it. But the flame goes out. They spend another minute trying to light it with Nick Wayne just kind of sitting there flopping around, like waiting for his spot, just like, okay, we're done. And then, like you said, Copeland goes for a power bomb, whiffs it. Wayne kind of taps it with like his ass, I think, hits the corner of it, and the flaming table goes flipping upside down. Obviously, it goes out. He doesn't go through the table. So he ends up just taking a bad bump that looks bad, doesn't satisfy the crowd, and then they can't redo it again because it's just too obvious. So then they just move on, and it sucked the wind out of it for me. But, you know, Edge, I'm going to always call him Edge for anybody that's wondering. It's just so much easier than calling him Adam Copeland. It just doesn't sound right. Adam, there you go, gets the win here, becomes the TNT champion, and is immediately attacked by Killswitch. And he's got this contract, and I hadn't heard the little thing about the title shot being available at any time, so I was just like, all right, what are they doing here? And they start acting like it's a money in the bag type of thing where he can cash it in right now, and I'm like, oh, they're just gonna suddenly that works that way now. But Christian convinces him to give him the TNT title match. And after a spear, Christian wins the title back. So Adam Copeland is the shortest reigning champion in AEW history right now. In any belt, I'm pretty sure. And he's technically a champion in AEW history. I thought this was funny, but I can understand why people were upset about it. And I can understand why people were saying, like, this defeated the whole purpose. Why was that a thing? But I also just go, all right, the troll in me thinks that that's kind of great.
I think, well, first of all, interesting that Copeland defeated Christian using the kill switch,
right?
And then Christian defeated Copeland using the spear. That was a nice little like juxtaposition there. But I think that, yeah, I'd say I can understand people being disappointed with the final outcome, but I think that it's the good kind of disappointment where you just, like, it just makes you hate Christian that little bit more because he's taking Killswitch's opportunity at the title, taking it for himself, and now he's just immediately won the title back. So Copeland now is probably even going to be more heated about chasing it back and getting one final opportunity at Cage, maybe working his way through other people to get to that. You could tell the story with Cage is like, oh, I've beaten you twice now for the title, even though he technically lost it in between there as well. Saying, oh, you don't get another shot at it, and so Copeland has to win a bunch of matches to earn another title match, so you can have him like face some other people rather than just like constantly being focusing on Cage and Killswitch and Nick Wayne. But yeah, I think that this it was a nice little twist that can still advance the story by having Cage technically, well, first of all, lose the title, but then eventually walk away still with the title. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, the match itself was a lot of fun. Definitely the best thing on the show to this point. So yeah, it was the start of what proved to be like a successful final hour or so of the pay-per-view.
And obviously, the follow-up for this can dictate whether this was great or terrible. Because if they end up just having like a rematch on Dynamite, Copeland wins the belt back, then you're like, well, what the fuck was the point in that? You know? But I don't think that that's necessarily going to be the case. I'm assuming that Christian's going to retain that title at least heading into Revolution, and either they're going to have the big blow-off match there, or somebody else will be fighting for that belt at that point or something. Maybe they do a ladder match. Maybe that's how they get into some of that, because they were definitely leaning into that a little bit here with the ladder spot and stuff. But I enjoyed that. I thought that was pretty funny. Outside of the table spot, that was definitely just like, oh, man, what a disappointment. Then we had the Continental Classic Tournament Final. Eddie Kingston going in with 2 of the 3 belts. Jon Moxley, challenger, and arguably the favorite to win in the sense that he's, more successful and a higher star and all. But Kingston gets the victory. The underdog comes out on top. I had written down on there, if you want to play a dangerous game, take a sip of your drink every time that there's a chop in the match. But they had a good match. They hug afterward. Kingston is holding up all 3 belts. The title seemed worse. Still don't like that name at all. And I know why the crown is there, because it's the Triple Crown thing, but I would think that maybe it would be making more sense to put 3 crowns on there, and maybe that it wouldn't be called the Continental Championship, because why is it Continental? But I mean, I'm going to be talking about that, I'm sure, for a while, so I'll tone down my thoughts on that a little bit. But it's not the ugliest championship at the very least, and I'm glad that Kingston won.
Yeah, I think the title looks pretty good. I'd say it's not like the greatest looking title of all time, but I think it looks pretty good for the most part. I can understand being called the Continental Championship. I know that it feels weird when you align it to both like the International Championship and the World Championship, but if it's attached to the Continental Classic and that's the title for the Continental Classic, then I guess what else can you call it other than the Continental Championship?
Yeah, but then they just shouldn't have called it the Continental Classic. They should have called it some other kind of name, you know what I mean? The Triple Crown Classic or something.
But it has a good thing of like that everyone shortened it now to the C2 in the same way they shortened the thing for the G1. So I think it works out. It's worked out pretty well for them. And I thought this was a really great way to end what was probably the best thing AEW has done. I would say like all year, but for a lot of this year, especially like the back half of this year, the Continental Classic tournament's been the best thing or the most interesting thing they've done. And this was a great way to end it. They had a very physical match. Like some of the chops that Kingston was delivering to Moxley, like the crowd was just on their feet for just how loud some of them were. Yeah, it was like brawling, some mat work, some throwing in some like jiu-jitsu stuff, all topped off with Bryan Danielson on commentary, which was excellent. Like him and Taz talking about the actual minutiae of the match and the ways that they were getting into the physical striking side of things or the more technical submission style things was great to listen to. And yeah, Kingston getting the victory just culminates what has been like a pivotal year in his career. It's where he's gone from being the almost guy to being the guy in many senses, and gets to win in front of a hometown crowd. Not absolutely exact, because like there's many different parts to New York, but Long Island's close enough to everywhere else. And yeah, him getting the victory was an emotional moment, like him holding all 3 of those titles, him hugging out with Moxley at the end, and yeah, it just feels like Eddie Kingston's finally arrived and he's totally made it in AEW and is living up to the fact that the crowd has always wanted to get behind him as champion. Now we'll just see how it progresses with him holding all 3 of these titles and how they want to proceed with that.
Yeah, very curious how that's all going to work out, like we've been talking about. But we won't know until, at the very, very least, this episode of Dynamite coming up. But more than likely, we won't know for quite a while when they start actually having him defend this championship, or if they book a match and it's like, okay, well, this match is for only one of those titles or something. Then we're going to get a little bit of a better indication for it. But at least for now, it's still kind of up in the air. At least we know what the championship looks like. We know who the champion is. We're getting there. It's just going to take, one little bit at a time for that. See, Guest 5 leaves a comment in here of, I never cared for Kingston before the C2. This went a good way to start winning me over. It's a good way of, they win you over through that. That means that it's a success. Guy123 says, I don't think this pay-per-view would be worth my money. I think if you were able to ignore what we've been saying, like, shut our opinions off and kind of erase that from your memory and all, if you aren't liking what we've been saying, then you probably saved yourself $50. I think I'd be pissed if I was paying $50 for it too. I'll say that.
Unfortunately, you don't have to pay that much. So.
Yeah, you get the lucky end of the stick there on that front. But guess 5 and the others that are in the chat here, if you were able to check it out live at all, if you paid for it instead of watching it through some other means, like, a friend of it, yours paid for it and you just kind of hopped over to their place or something, I don't know, or you found a illegal stream or something, let us know if you thought that it was worth the purchase. Maybe some people say yes, maybe some people say no. And then main event of the night, MJF defending the AEW World Championship against Samoa Joe. He had a cool little, he being MJF, a cool little vignette entrance thing. Bunch of New Yorkers saying he's our scumbag and wearing the Burberry scarf and all. He had a good robe on. That was cool. Adam Cole was out, which immediately was like, all right, well, there you go. That's that devil reveal. And throughout the match, I didn't write down much. There were some decent moments here and there. Muscle Buster on the apron. I like that quite a bit. I like that MJF was selling his arm throughout the whole thing. He wasn't able to get Salt of the Earth locked in all that well. I like the little moment, too, where he pushed Joe into Bryce Remsburg. He's the heel that's acting like a babyface and all, so why not? But here's where I didn't enjoy this. MJF asks Cole for the Dynamite Diamond ring, and he drops it. Joe grabs him, locks him into his submission. Remsburg comes back up, puts the arm up. 1, falls down, picks back up again. Number 2, picks back up again. You're kind of assuming, okay, well, MJF is going to do the whole thing where he gets the arm steady on the 3rd drop, and then we continue, and then it factors in some fashion, and then it's just nope. And Samoa Joe wins the title, and the crowd let out this like collective, because it didn't feel like that was supposed to be the end of the match. Maybe there could have been something with the Diamond ring, maybe a more direct interference from Cole or something, but the timing felt off, and Joe just grabs the belt, bolts out of there because they need to do the devil reveal, which that's the 4 masked men come out, Cole and MJF get held down. It's the whole like, hit me, don't hit him. No, hit me, don't hit him. The lights go out, the lights come back on, and Adam Cole is sitting on the chair now instead of being, threatened to be hit with the chair. And the 4 other people unmask. It's Taven, Bennett, Roderick Strong, and Wardlow. The people that were pretty much the most obvious choices. And they beat the crap out of MJF, and that's the end of the show. And I just did not like the way that this went down. I think that you didn't need to do like a big, shocking, oh no, it's actually these 4 people that we signed to the company, and you never saw that one coming. It's fucking John Cena, or you know what I mean? Like one of those kind of things. It didn't need to be anything other than these guys for me to go, well, the storyline works out that way, and that, whatever. It's a little predictable, but at the same time, I'll take logical, predictable, if it's executed well, over surprising shocker that doesn't make any sense almost any time of the week. But I didn't like the end of this match. And then for the big reveal to just be that. And now I got to assume MJF's going to take some time off, and Cole isn't able to wrestle yet. So what do they do in the meantime to keep this from completely growing stale? I don't know. How do you feel about this whole setup?
I feel this whole main event went as good as I hoped it probably could have gone. I think that overall this was probably, I would say, like exactly how I would have done it, but pretty close to how I would have done it. I thought you had the fun opening video package for Max, which was like is typical of his approach to these things, especially in Long Island, and he came out as the conquering babyface, had Adam Cole in his corner, and Joe out there, like playing actual heel. This one, which is odd for him to do because he's treated like such a legend in most places now. And then they told the right story with the fact that MJF is injured and his shoulder's hurting, and he was taken out by Joe on the previous episode of Dynamite. So Joe pretty much dominated 90% of the match, like hitting a muscle buster on the apron, like diving through the ropes, just taking control of things. MJF having to just fight from underneath, getting a few hope spots here and there, but realistically not getting any sort of sustained offense on Joe. Like, he gets a heat seeker at one point, but it's pretty much just like flitted attempts to doing it. And then, yeah, the whole thing of him dropping the thing was subtle, but I think that was deliberate in the sense that you shouldn't. I don't think you need to make it like super obvious or make it like a super big thing. It's just a case of Cole could have handed in the thing, but he decided, okay, I'm just going to drop it accidentally, and that's going to give Joe enough time to lock you in the Coquina clutch. I think it was a cool thing to have. They had in the previous match with Kingston and Moxley, they had Kingston do the arm thing and get up on the third one when Moxley had him tied up in the Bulldog choke. So they did this again, and then you assume that, oh, he's going to get up on the third one, and he doesn't. And Bryce Remsburg is almost shocked about the fact that, oh, he's actually out, and okay, that's the match over. And I think that I actually kind of liked the fact that it was out of the blue, because I think that's, you wanted to take the air out of the. This is supposed to be World's End, and it's supposed to be the end of MJF's world, and it just kind of ends in a bit of a whimper, which I think is actually the right, just based on how this title reign has gone, especially towards the end. I've almost felt quite apropos to have it end in such a, I guess, weirdly shocking way. Just like Joe just, passing him out and winning the title and then getting out of Dodge. And yeah, I thought the reveal of the devil and the henchman was quite artistically well done. And then it was the obvious 5 people, but I'd rather it be the obvious safe route rather than something that was a bit more of a swerve that just, in order to add some shock value, that would have made a lot less sense. So yeah, you have Adam Cole and his goons take out MJF, and I presume he'll be out injured for a while because he's suffering from some actual real life serious injury. So we'll see how they decide to proceed with it and what the rationale for Cole doing it, because there's the one thing that stands a little bit in the way for me is Cole has decided to take out MJF and be the devil in this, but surely his motive would be to become the world champion.
Mm-hmm.
And this approach means that he's not the world champion. And the one argument you can make for it is maybe, with Cole dropping the ring, maybe his intention was to give MJF the ring and have MJF help him beat Samoa Joe and then attack him afterwards while MJF was still the champion. But MJF just lost in the process. So
I think they're more so going for the idea that he just wanted to screw him out of the title rather than that he wants to become the champion.
Maybe, but they'll have to find some kind of justification reason of why he is so, he has so much hatred towards MJF. And maybe you could say that, the argument being that he was planning on screwing MJF eventually, but then MJF, because of his involvement in the previous Joe match, which led to him busting his ankle up, he maybe blames MJF for that. And that decides to just accelerate the process. I mean, who knows? We'll have to see what his justification ends up being for it and what they end up saying. I hope it's not one of those instances that, we're going to have promo time about Adam Cole. It says, I don't need to tell you why I
did
these things. Hopefully they do decide to give it a modicum of explanation at the very least. But
if he cuts a promo where he goes, I bet you all want to know why I turned on MJF. Well, you know what? You don't deserve to have an explanation. I hope that they don't do that.
But it's almost like, I would say that, just from my perspective, and again, I know it might be just being in the minority here, and I'm totally fine with that, but I think almost the simplicity in which they approach this match and the kind of by the numbers approach was actually the most refreshing thing about it. And the fact that, okay, everything kind of went as I expected. Joe won the match. He won it cleaner than I expected, but he won the match. He's the new AEW World Champion. And then it was revealed that Adam Cole's the devil and all the goons are the people that we expected it to be. It's kind of oh, that's actually pretty refreshing that they've just gone with the simple, straightforward approach rather than try to mess it up with a load of other bullshit in order to try and add a bit of intrigue or spice to it. They've just decided, okay, this is the way the story has gone, and we're just going to play it out that way. So almost its simplicity was more shocking than if they'd actually done something shocking.
Always, as a wrestling fan, you always have to try to look 5 steps ahead, and sometimes really you should be looking 2 steps backward. But yeah, I didn't like the ending of it. I thought that flat, taking the sales out kind of ending, more often than not, just kind of reflects on the booking of it rather than like, oh no, we're all upset that MJF lost. It comes off a little bit more like bad timing to me, since we know that it's scripted and all. Sure that there could have been a lot worse scenarios, but
yeah. But I mean, let's not undersell the fact that Samoa Joe's world champion now.
Right, that's very cool because big fan of Samoa Joe. So
yeah, and especially the back half of the year that he's had in AEW, with like the long run with the Ring of Honor television title, the feud with CM Punk that ended at All In, which was like, which should have been a big deal, and then it ended up being a big deal for all reasons outside of the actual match itself. And yeah, his involvement with MJF leading up to this moment, like he's been an important pillar for the company in the last like 4 to 6 months. So to see him end the year as world champion is a really cool moment, and something that's befitting a legend of his stature. So I'd be interested to see what direction they take with the world title now, because now if MJF is being either taken off TV or tied up with this Devil storyline away from the world championship, it now opens up to a whole new raft of people to go after the world title. Obviously, Swerve would be someone that a lot of people would be looking towards the potential future champion. But
you got to assume people like Adam Page might be in the mix, and likely not Chris Jericho, and likely not Kenny Omega, and like some of these other bigger names. But freshen up the scenery a little bit.
The more I think about it, the more I'm believing that the next champion is going to be Danielson.
Around what time do you think? Pre or post London?
Before Revolution.
Before even Revolution?
Yeah, I don't think Joe's going to have a long-term title reign. Because I think that for me, the plan should be to get the World Championship on Swerve before All In. And I think that Joe being a heel, or at least like being depicted at this point as a heel, curtails him being the guy that can immediately give the title to Strickland. So you need a babyface in between that. And I think Hangman doesn't make sense because you've already had... I mean, Hangman makes sense as the guy to take the title off Swerve eventually, but not as the guy that Swerve beats for the title. So I think that... And then you get to have the... just for like Tony Khan's own like little stats and credits or whatever you want to call for it, he's had both Samoa Joe as a world champion, CM Punk as a world champion, and then gets Bryan Danielson as a world champion as well. I think, and also it bleeds into the story of Danielson has gone for world titles and gone for other championships in AEW and has not won anything. That was the story that he told coming out of the Continental Classic, in that he's had all these big opportunities, and when the big matches come, he's always just lost it, or just hasn't been able to get the victory where it matters most. So him becoming world champion in the last couple of... I mean, maybe Revolution would be a good time to do it. I mean, that gives Joe a 2 to 3 month reign. That's pretty good going. Like, he gets to have he'll probably have a few good matches on Dynamite and Collision in the lead up to that. But I think having Danielson be the guy to take the title off him at Revolution, then maybe Danielson loses the title at Double or Nothing or somewhere similar to Swerve.
So who do you think would be then in the title match at London?
Ospreay
versus Swerve?
Yeah, it feels like I'm saying there's going to be like a lot of world title changes, which feels like maybe that's a bit over the top. But I think that Ospreay... I mean, actually, maybe Ospreay doesn't face Swerve. Maybe Swerve faces someone else and Ospreay faces Danielson.
Right. That's what I could potentially think.
Yeah. But I think that there's a good chance that we have Ospreay against Swerve at like Full Gear or something, or next year's World's End if they carry this over to the following year, and that's when in my mind Ospreay ends the year as AEW World Champion. But Swerve should be champion at some point this year because like no one's like star has risen probably this much. Especially in the last like 3 months or so as Swerve. So Swerve should definitely be world champion at some point this year.
Hey, maybe they plan on turning Swerve babyface.
Maybe they have to maybe they'll have to because I think it's weird because I think his character only works as a heel. But he could be like, you know, a cool heel that people still cheer and get behind just because he's got that cool factor about him. But I still think that he should continue to act and portray himself as a heel, even if it ends up with him getting still like some more babyface reactions. Because I don't know whether his character really works if he's a quote unquote good guy. He'd have to be like an anti-hero at the best. But yeah, as I say, there's a lot of things they can do, and now with Joe as champion, everything kind of taken away from the whole MJF melodrama that surrounded the last couple of months of his reign, we can now look forward to a more open title picture.
And for all we know, that's going to end up being the best title reign that AEW's ever had. It's cool that Joe's the champion because Joe's awesome. So we're going to have to see what 2024 has in store because, I mean, next show, Dynamite's going to be already in 2024. So that's how AEW ends their year, and for better or worse, that's where we're heading. I haven't gotten any messages from Rob about anything particularly funny or interesting that's happened on the scrum, and I haven't seen anything online about any of that. Have you?
No, there won't be. I don't think there will be yet because like the first portions of these scrums are always with Tony Khan alongside some of the wrestlers that have wrestled on the previous show. So I think he started with Joe, and now he's with Swerve at the moment. So I don't think we'll get any of those super hard hitting ones that we're hoping gets asked until Khan's on his own. So that won't be until like the second hour or so of this of the scrum.
I'm very interested to see what happens there. I'm very interested to see what's going on with what Boozer keeps teasing for Monday Night Raw this week. I mean, who knows what's going on with that, but obviously we talked about some predictions and all going forward about that. We're going to have a big week coming up, so hope you enjoy the ride with us for New Year Knockout Week and the whole fallout of World's End on Dynamite and such, and I hope, obviously, that you have a really great New Year for anybody that celebrates that instead of just going to bed at a normal time, waking up the next day and going, oh, calendar changed or something. But be safe when you are celebrating that. Don't forget to fill out your fan feedback survey. That's part of the end of the year traditions and stuff. Make sure that you are following Facebook and Twitter and everything for Smark Out Moment, as well as fanboysanonymous.com. Go over to that site and you can see all the links there. You can also see all the links over on the link tree at amangotree.com for, Fanboys Anonymous, Smark Out Moment, and other things as well. Toni Mango is what you should be plugging in for a lot of those other things from my personal accounts and following them and stuff. Make sure you're also following Callum.
Yep, you can find me on Twitter at Wigmeister14. Check out the Power Rankings, typically every week. I decided to not do it this week because only NXT had a show.
Yeah, it would have been kind of weird.
So it didn't really kind of change the rankings too much. So normal service will resume next week when everyone's back doing live shows again. So check that out though. Check out the Power Rankings, see what the previous week's one was and all the other stuff. And you can also find the Fantasy League at www.fantasyleague.com. Also check out Free Smark Moment to see how all our teams are performing as we head into the new year. It's pretty close up towards the top between me and Tony. And Rob is also, well, you can argue whether competing is the right word, but he's there.
Competing, but putting up a competitive effort are two different things.
Yeah, I mean, if his aim was to, he was definitely, battling to finish last place, then he's winning by a landslide.
Living up to the name, robbed of points. So, yeah, that's it for 2023 for the Smark Out Moment podcast as well. We don't have anything scheduled, been told, next week when we get into the one to watch for the end of the year, kind of transition into 2024, who we think is, potentially going to have a breakout year or just, kick some ass in 2024 for all sorts of different things. We usually do like a WWE, an AEW, women's division, tag division, blah, blah, blah. Used to be just the one to watch. And then we realized, we should probably do more and make it a better podcast. So we got that going on. I think we might end up doing a dark cast of our heel and face turn predictions. That was something that people were interested in last year. So maybe we carried that over and do that again this year. Obviously, if you want something out there, pick a poison tier is the best way to make sure that it happens. But even if you just leave a comment below or you send a tweet or you send some feedback through the contact form or something, any kind of stuff like that, I always take that into consideration. So keep all that in mind too. And just stay tuned because, before you know it, it's going to be the next episode of Smack Talk. So we want to thank you for tuning in for the AEW World's End Pay-Per-Viewpoint post show. Thank you for all of your support throughout 2023 and all the previous years that you have been checking us out. And we're already going to thank you in advance for checking us out in 2024. And now that I've done that, you're guilt tripped into doing it. You have to come back. But adios for now, everybody. This has been another Smark Out Moment, and we are being counted out.